Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Ironbark podcast. I am your host, Epion, and I have a special guest with me today. And I'm just going to give the mic to him and let him introduce himself and give you a little bit of his background.
Hey guys, my name's Grant. Um, yeah, just thanks for having me on the show, and excited to be here. I like watching your stuff online, all the different pictures that you've put out from out west. How you enjoying it out there?
Dude, I love it. It's like one of the best decisions I've ever made moving out here. Obviously, I always really liked hiking. I like the wildlife. So a lot of my trips I would take would be to the west coast of Canada, mountains, whatever. And I kept finding myself vacationing here, visiting here, and I was like, why don't I just move to where I vacation to? And then basically every weekend is essentially equivalent to a vacation to me. Though I guess things can get a bit stale after a while because it's just the typical what you're used to. It's the things you always see. But for me, it still hasn't let up a bit. And there's just so much more wildlife that I'm able to just kind of just go for a hike, go wander out into the mountains, and I'm almost guaranteed to find something. Like I'll find something, and I can start recording. It gives me plenty of stuff like video to record. I got really big into video. The photos I felt like were okay, but it was just such like you could what if you for me I had like a grizzly bear or whatever, and it would just be sitting there. And I'd be like I could take photos for hours of this thing, but it's not really giving like it's just, a single still image doesn't tell a story very well. So I was like,
Yeah,
so I was like,
you're living it. You're living life. That's amazing.
yeah,
I've been living vicariously through your Instagram and your Twitter or X now.
X.
Yeah, definitely X. Daddy Elon. No, I've been watching your stuff, and I am so jealous. I lived out west in British Columbia for a hot minute, maybe like 4 or 5 months,
I think you
and
visited not too long ago. I think you were out there.
yeah, I
Yeah,
was I was there last summer, and I got a chance to check out the island a little bit more out on Vancouver Island, and it honestly, God, it's God's country. I just amazing. I wish I had the balls like you to just get up and do it. And so, that is definitely getting planned into the agenda down the road. When I haven't fully decided and committed to it yet, but yeah, out west is definitely where it's at. But that being said, I swear Alberta is the one province I've skipped for no reason whatsoever. Alberta is like the one place I really, really want to go. I want to check out the Rockies so bad, the Stampede, um, the wildlife, the mountains, the rivers, the whole bit. Like I've got a lot of friends that I grew up with. I grew up in Muskoka, and a lot of good buddies of mine that left the Muskoka region. Um, they ended up going working on the oil rigs. I mean, it was you were either stuck in the town for the most part, you got into construction, laboring, whatever, like you name it, something in the trades in Muskoka, or you moved and worked on the oil rigs. And like some of the guys made great money. They did very well for themselves in their career, and they still go back and forth today to Alberta and share their hunting stories and stuff like that. It's pretty wild. I kick myself in the ass for not getting out there.
yeah. There's a lot of people. Like it seems like everybody from Alberta or that's in Alberta isn't from Alberta. And that's kind of what makes it kind of cool too. So like when you go to like Banff or you go to the mountains, obviously you have a lot of those like temporary seasonal workers and stuff. But it's crazy, man. Like you hear so many different accents. You go, you'll hear an Aussie, you'll hear a Kiwi, you'll hear like a bunch of different British ones. Like it's insane, and like everyone's just kind of like I don't know, socializing. You'll do a hike, you'll get to like this like lookout point, and you'll just start naturally just start talking to people, meeting people, and they're like, "Where are you from?" They're like, "Oh, I'm from Texas," and then they have you have like these southern accents and stuff like that. It's unreal, man. Like Alberta, for the most part, after the mountains, it gets pretty boring. Not gonna lie, like in the mountains is in part shared with BC. Like it's predominantly BC. The only thing I would say about BC is that the gas prices are insane. So when you want to travel and like drive through the mountains and stuff like that, like I definitely think there's an advantage to being on the Berta side for like a little bit. Like when I go over to like Yoho National Park, Kootenay, which are in BC, or even like Revelstoke, I'm fueling
Mhm.
up in like Alberta, and I'm making sure like that tank is extra topped so I can make it through where I need to go and stuff like that. Because man, it guts me every single time. Like it's significantly more, like 40 cents more sometimes.
Bring a couple of jerry cans. You're good to go.
Yeah,
Fill them up.
yeah,
Yeah, I do the same thing in Ontario. Like living in the city now, it's the prices are just so high, so I refuse to fill up at any Esso or Shell. I end up going to Costco's, or when I go up north, I end up hitting up the native gas stations and tax free. So
yeah. So you mentioned earlier like it's the plan for you in the future to move out west, and it's funny because what happened with me is I saw other people doing it, and that's what triggered the inspiration for me. I don't know if you remember like Sean, like Mackenzie, just name dropped him. Hopefully, he doesn't hate me. He's been on the podcast before, but like he moved to the
yeah.
Yukon. He did the whole like
Oh,
outdoor stuff and like all that stuff. I watched him do it, and I was just like, I would talk to him. He'd be like, he's like happier than I've ever been. Like even like a year after he did, he's like happier than I've ever been. I'm like, okay, like,
oh, that's amazing.
and
Oh,
then
I'm so happy for him. He was such a nice guy. He was such a nice guy to be around. And I remember he was always so into camping, and like any chance he got, he would get out of the city and go do something. And even that, when we were all living in the city together, he I would chat with him about his camping trips or like what he was doing. I never saw him as getting into hunting and fishing and stuff like that so hard. And then what was hilarious was I didn't even know he had left, and all of a sudden I'm just looking, and he's living in the dark for 40 days in a row, and I'm like, what? I'm like, where's this guy gone? Like, I haven't seen him in forever. Everyone starts telling me, they're like, yeah, Sean's gone to he's gone to the Yukon, or where, I don't even, where is he? Is he in the Northwest Territories or Yukon?
Yukon Whitehorse, yeah,
Okay, yeah. That's in like just checking his pictures out, same thing. I'm just like, oh my God, I would die for that. That's a dream.
yeah, and he
It's
doesn't
an
even really
absolute
post
dream.
everything. Like he's not really a social media guy, so it's like sometimes I would talk to him pretty frequently. We used to like game together, and dude, some of the stories he'd be like on river trips, and they would just go up the Yukon River, I think it's what it is. And
That's
dude, he's like
so cool.
we just bring like batter and pans. We would just catch whatever, cook it and fry it up right there, fresh as can be. And he's like, it was all delicious. And I was just like, dude, I'm like, that's unreal.
That's awesome.
I kept
That's so cool.
I kept planning to like meet up with him. Like I kept saying, oh, we should. But for me and him to meet up halfway, I think it's like,
That's gonna be 12 hours each
yeah, I
way.
think it's 12 hours for him and 12 hours for me. And it would be like in the middle
Oof.
of nowhere, British Columbia.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's a couple of nice flying spots up there. I was looking up. I was thinking about taking my girl out there, and just we'll go up into like northern BC. She moved to BC way before she moved to Canada. Or she's from Russia, and she moved to BC, and then ended up that's where she grew up. And so now we talk about it all the time. Where it's like, oh, we should get going west,
Oh, dude,
And then
that's a good one.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe we go like northern BC. That would be absolutely wild.
Would
And
be wild. There's some beautiful spots, man. There's some beautiful small
oh,
towns in BC that I've driven through, like little mountain towns, and I'm like, how does anybody live here? There's nothing here, but they look like they have the best life ever.
oh, dude, it's amazing. And the people are great too. Like they're just living life off land. I had a really good buddy of mine kind of do what Sean did, and my buddy's name is Jimmy. And oh man, this guy was the biggest beauty alive. Like he grew up in Oakville, and he grew up like his family was fairly well off, which really didn't coincide with like who this guy was at all, because we ended up working in Algonquin Park together, and we were park rangers. We were trying to be wardens. We were thinking like that's where we would end up and doing whatnot, but we ended up just working like gates, just issuing park tickets and stuff like that. It was like the best worst job of all time, because we got to work in some of the most beautiful park in all of Canada, and we're seeing bears daily, moose daily, fishing all the time, playing beach volleyball at like the camp house and whatnot. And it was we ended up getting wildfires that year on like the east side of the park. It was a really crazy year, but we were working like the bottom of the totem pole job. Like fresh out of college, you're getting a student wage of, I think it was like 10.25 an hour.
Yeah, but I think
So
that's the best job you could get though. Like I
those are
think you like for
the
a kid
best.
just starting out, like all that experience and all that cool stuff and this like that primal
Well,
nature, like it's good starting experience, I would say, like especially with the forest fires and stuff. Like,
oh, the experiences were second to none. You could not beat it. It was the best going camping, and camping we got to go 2 days for free in interior camping anywhere in the park we wanted to go, as long as it wasn't a long weekend, I think it was. And but it was the pay that was the worst part, because here I was like a starving student. And now they fed you and they gave you a room and board, but they took that off your pay as well. So even though we were making 10.25 an hour, I think it ended up being like after taxes, after deductions and everything, it ended up being about $4.80 an hour.
oh,
It was just
brutal, dude. But I don't know,
oh, like
still whatever.
no, it was still amazing. Like still to this day, like I keep in touch with a couple of the guys that I met there. This was maybe, oh shoot, this might have been 12 years ago now. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What's your best story about like a wildlife spotting or like an encounter with like with like a wild animal?
Ah,
If you can think of one off the top
you
of
know
your
what?
head.
What one that comes to the top of my head? I don't know if it's the best one by any stretch. It definitely isn't the best one. But it was still pretty cool. So while I was working in Algonquin Park, I was uh I was dating. I had a long term or a long distance relationship at the time, and there's no anyone that knows Algonquin Park, like you do not have good cell phone service at all. The only spot you get it is at or on Highway 60, and you have to go like through the trails and up to the road, and then basically just park on the road, and then you get your cell phone. So you get like people from time to time, like usually like once or twice a week, people will go up and make their calls or emails, whatever they need to do, and then they go back to the camp and we camp and play guitar or play volleyball or have some beers or whatever we're doing. And so I'm sitting there, and at the time, like I was having this like huge fight with my ex, and all of a sudden this moose just popped out as she's sitting there like screaming at me on the phone, and this moose just like staring at me like a car's length away from me, and I'm just like I went dead silent, and she's like, "Are you even listening to me?" And I was like, "No." I, I started laughing. I was like, "No, you'll never believe it, but a big cow moose just came walking out, and she's just staring at me." I'm like, I don't know if I should maybe get to the other side of my car or what.
She's
It,
just
it,
like, you're making this up. You're you're just trying to get
no,
out of this
oh,
conversation.
it was. I was, but it was real.
Two things
I
can be
was
true at the same
definitely,
time.
yeah, absolutely. It was fate.
That's crazy. I had a buddy tell
That
me
was
not too long
that was a
ago,
funny
like he
one
was
though.
camping and like a herd of like they call them wild horses, but they're technically feral because they're like descendants of previously domesticated ones. But we'll romanticize it a bit and call them wild horses. They were just like camping, bunch of buddies, I guess like yucking it up, drinking that kind of stuff. Middle of the night, like they're kind of like winding down, going to bed, and then apparently like this herd just comes trampling through. Like something's like scared them off in the forest or something was chasing them, or who knows? Anything scares a horse, and it just came like ripping through. And I don't know. I thought that was a pretty cool story. I was just like, holy crap! I couldn't imagine that. That'd be pretty bad, like a stampede.
Oh,
If you're
that's
like
one thing
laying
I want to.
down in a tent and a
Yeah.
stampede comes through, like who thinks of that? Like that's not one of the hazards you think of. You think of bear. You think of like maybe like an elk, like or like a moose. You don't think of a stampede. But I guess that could happen with elk too. But
I suppose. I mean, I don't know too much about that. Like, I'm not familiar with elk or wild horses. Like, that's the biggest reason why I want to get out to Alberta is like to watch wild horses do their thing. Never seen that before, and I fantasize about that all the time.
yeah, there's tons of different stuff, man. It was like peeling back the layers on an onion when I moved out here because I knew there was like wild animals. Like I knew there was elk, I knew there was moose, I knew there was like deer, mule deer, like all this different stuff, bighorn sheep, mountain goats. But like I really started kind of like I was like, what? There's horses? I was like, I thought because like for the longest time I thought, oh, it's only Sable Island on the East Coast that has the like wild horses, and then turns out that's not the case. There's actually tons out here, and then
No way.
there's wild like what are they, bison or buffalo? Bison, I think. And like there's a little national park dedicated to them like northeast of Edmonton, but it kind of feels more like a, I don't know, it's too small of a park. And then kind of, so it just feels kind of like an open range ranch. It doesn't really feel like a national park to like any extent, or a provincial one. I'm not sure which one it is. But they're putting them in on the, what is it, like the east side of the mountains. There's a place called like Panther Valley. It takes a few days of hiking to get in there. Haven't been in there yet, but apparently they've started to reintroduce or rewild a wild herd in there. So that's like there's a bunch of stuff that's really hard to get to. And the same thing with the caribou. So like reindeer, they have like those crescent antlers. They're in Alberta as well, but you have to like do like, sometimes you can get lucky, they'll like appear in random places, but generally speaking, you have to do like this like multi-day hike up in Jasper to get to like this valley where they like hang out, and then that's where you can get good footage of them apparently. So there's, I don't know, man, it's an onion, man. You just keep pulling it back, and like people will just like randomly send me messages to be like, hey, I hear you're looking for marmots. Well, there's a marmot colony up here. Yeah, and that was a disaster. That was quite a hike. That was like a long hike. It was like all day hike there and back, and it killed me. And it like killed me. And I only found one marmot. I found one.
At least you got one.
Yeah, I just got one. It was.
It's funny. It's funny how elusive they can be for the thing that you're looking for the most. I mean, like I hunt quite often. Every year, I get out for minimum deer season, and I try to get out for like partridge or whatever. But like,
Yeah.
it seems every time I go out partridge hunting, I never see a partridge. Every time I'm deer hunting, there's four partridges on like my hike into the bush, or like just like sitting on watch, and all of a sudden, like I remember just last year, I went partridge hunting. I took a couple of the guys, and I was like, yeah, I guarantee you we're gonna see partridge. Like I went moose hunting the week before. I'm like, I have never seen so much partridge in my life. Like it's littered in there. We're good. Like we're definitely getting a couple for sure. So I talked up this big game, of course, and like walked maybe 3 miles behind, like kind of around Highway 400, and didn't see a thing. Like barely saw squirrels.
Oh man.
So 2 weeks after that was deer season. The very first day, I get out my car and I'm packing up. I'm getting everything ready, and I load up my gun and I start walking into the trail. Oh, I don't walk 15 feet into the trail, and there's a partridge sitting right there. I'm just looking at him going, oh, come on, man.
Do you think maybe they're like conditioned to some extent now to be like familiar with like the human like hunting pattern? Because you know how it's like all regulated by like days and weeks. Do you think like now they're like, oh yeah, this time last year, a bunch of us got friggin' dusted, so maybe we should go like
yeah,
somewhere else.
they convene for meetings for sure. They'll do like a full on boardroom meeting of all the heads of all the species, and they break it down. They're like, okay, so we're going to take this day off. Everyone lay low.
I feel like they know. I feel like to some extent they know, because you go to a national park, like those animals don't give a crap about you. You could, in theory, if you want to, probably get pretty close, though I wouldn't recommend it. You could probably pet them or feed them, which is both illegal. Don't do it. You're supposed to be like so many feet away. But in theory, like what I'm saying is they're so like desensitized to humans that they don't care. But as soon as you go outside of the park where there's like hunting and that kind of sort of stuff, those animals care a lot about you. Like they don't want anything to do with you. They want to be so far away. And these are like imaginary lines, and like their territories overlap, so you're going to see some of the same animals you'd see in the park versus like the I guess you call it crown land or whatever. But they're like very apprehensive. Like the elk behavior, super different, like massively different. And I think like I feel like they know like where they're safe from humans and where they're not. And I also feel like maybe time of year they have like some sort of like inclination to know, no, this is when they get hungry. Like I'm not going to go there. Like, I don't know. I could be like,
I think there's something to that though. I mean, I don't know for certain, but I think there's something to it. Like they know. I mean, you got to think we live our lives day to day about like either going to work or like we have our set routes and we do our thing, and we typically sit in the same chairs and we sit the same way. We're like creatures of habit, where animals are living literally minute to minute of like we have to be at the absolute heightened sense of security, heightened sense of smell and everything to make sure like to ensure our survival. And it's not until like they make a mistake that it's either fatal or they fluke out and they get away. And so I don't know. I think through evolution they slowly start to develop their sense of time, and it's realistically like be and this is a big reason why hunting season is always during the mating season is that's when they get a little kind of brain dead, and
Yeah.
that's when the bucks start to kind of like they lose their sense of security, and they're just like I need to mate, like I need to get it on.
Yeah, they're running across highways, they're getting clipped, like they're not thinking, they're not being sensible. They're just all fired up. Mating season's awesome. I love it. Rut,
Yeah,
when the elk start
yeah.
going, dude, I have like a lot of footage I haven't posted because some of it's kind of like there'll be other photographers like ruining the audio and the background, and it just makes it an issue. But dude, that bugling, there's no better sound.
Oh, that is wild. That and wolves. I find wolves have got the most chilling. So I was moose hunting when I was a kid with my dad, and this is the very first time that I'd ever heard this in my life. And then I honestly, God, still to this day, I still have like a very vivid memory of wolves, like not howling, but they were biting or eating something, and like the yiping and the they were just barking at each other. And oh, it sounded so vicious and it sounded so close. But my dad was sitting beside me, and he was like looking at me, and I'm looking at him. I may have been 10 or 11 at the time, and it was like across a swamp, but like it sounded so close and the scariest thing, but still
Yeah,
the most like
you can hear the
interesting.
bone crack when they bite down on stuff like that from far away.
Oh my God, it's menacing. That's the only way I could put it.
I
It's
have
wild.
I've only seen wolves a couple of times, and every time I have or had some sort of encounter, it has been very vivid. So one time, I was back in Ontario, and I was just driving down the road at like 3 a.m. at night, and I see this thing. I think it's a dog running down the side of the road, like on the shoulder. And I'm like, oh, that's somebody's dog. It's pretty cold out. It's pretty dark out. And I drive, and eventually I catch up to it, but it's like going. And I get up beside it, and I'm like, oh, it's not even mistakable. It is a wolf. It's not a coyote. It's huge, beautiful, and and I was just like, holy crap! Like
Whereabouts was that?
that was up by just outside of Barrie,
Okay,
near
all
like
right.
sort of by like towards Angus a little bit.
Okay, yeah. There's a
Yeah,
lot of wolves out that way. A lot of farm fields and whatnot. Like the wolves I heard were up in Britt. Do you know where
mm.
Britt is? It's about it's about another half hour or so north of Perry Sound.
Okay, yeah,
So yeah, about half hour, 45 minutes away, and a lot of swampy area. And so when you're kind of tucked in the back and you're looking for moose, it's like, and everything's quiet. You hear everything. Everything is amplified, including the squirrels. Like I still can't get over that. Squirrels will
squirrels.
snap a little branch just beside you, and you're thinking like, oh, I'm waiting for this massive buck to come out, and little
Squirrels in
snap, and you're just,
Ontario or something else though. They're huge. There's no squirrels that big out here besides the marmots, but they're like different thing.
oh, that actually reminds me. Just thinking of a good animal encounter. I was stalked by a fisher. Do you know what a fisher is?
Yeah, it's like a mink or a pine
It's
marten,
like a
but like
like a
larger.
larger mink, and they're very vicious, extremely vicious, like weasel type animal, but
Yeah, like an
much
otter
larger than a
sort of,
weasel.
but like nastier
Yeah,
and
yeah,
like
large claws.
more kind of like its fur is not like smooth like an otter. It's like kind of like bushy and kind of like Oscar the
They're
Grouch.
Yeah, they're actually like a very beautiful animal, from my point of view anyway. But I was deer hunting, and I was walking
Invasive
down the
too.
trail. Extremely evasive. Like they're very difficult to find. If you're going to look for them, you're probably not going to see it. Eat a lot. They'll eat a lot of like cats and dogs,
Jesus,
smaller animals, stuff like that. Like
really? Eh?
so, in small communities like where I'm from, if your cat goes missing, like it's and you don't find it for a week, like it's probably got eaten by a fisher, unfortunately. But
Dang,
yeah, they're very vicious. Like they'll take down. I would probably put them up against like a German Shepherd, no
that's
problem.
crazy, man. Because like I've
Yeah,
seen
like
cats like fight off coyotes on like Instagram and stuff. I'm kind of like, oh, cats are kind of more resourceful than you'd think, but I guess some of them are lazy and not very fighty.
so I'd never seen a fisher before this point, and I'm walking down the trail, and so I'm just taking my time walking in, kind of just creeping, and as I don't know, I have like this, when you feel like you're being watched,
Yep.
like I had that sixth sense, like just tingling, and I'm just sitting there looking around. There's a fresh patch of snow that was on the ground, and I'm looking around. It's very hardwooded, so visibility isn't like super, but I could see fair distance between the trees. And I'm looking around, and I see like this probably 100 yards away, like this flash of like black fur. And I'm looking, and I'm going like, oh, that's a big squirrel. Like looking a little closer, and I'm seeing it jump from rock to dead branch to rock to rock, and then it's not hitting ground. It's not hitting any of the leaves that are on the ground, and it's like jumping far, and it's getting closer and closer. And I'm watching it, so I start pulling out my camera, and I start taking photos of it. I'm zooming in pretty far on it as it's getting closer, and it's jumping. It's like zigzagging back in the coming closer to me. And it wasn't looking at me as it was zigzagging, but now I'm locked on, and I'm going, oh, that's a fisher. Wow, it's big. Like, it's a big fisher. It's probably like as it was stretched out, I would probably say it was about maybe three, maybe 4 feet long.
Okay.
It
Wow.
was a
Yeah,
it was a
that's a big boy.
fair, yeah, it was long, and I ended up snapping some great pictures. I'll send them to you for sure, and you can put them up. But as it was jumping, like you could, if you zoom in, you could see its claws like are like half the length of my fingers,
That's
and
great. Yeah,
you could see
crazy.
some of its teeth too. It's beautiful animal, but it ended up getting to about maybe 10 yards away from me, and it stopped, and then it looked up at me, and I was watching it, and it looked at me, and it's like staying super still. So I went to go get another picture, but I'm also like so intrigued by this thing as well, and I'm like not taking pictures anymore. And it's looking at me, and then it just turns and gone. Like it was like, oh, jigs up, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
But
they're
that was a really cool experience for sure.
those creatures are crazy. People underestimate the like the size of like the claw and just like your average animal. Like look at a beaver. The back of a beaver's foot looks like a dragon's claw. Like it's insane. It's huge. It's massive.
Oh yeah, they're they're such a pain in the ass too. My dad and I and my family, we just bought we just bought some property, and there's a spring that's pushing into a little tiny little lake, and that spring is held up by a beaver dam that's like, oh, it's got to be about 10 feet long, maybe 5 feet wide. Like it's a doozy. So I'm like, oh man, I gotta break that down. I
Oh my
gotta
god.
add to, I gotta blow it up.
Did you know Alberta has the world's largest beaver dam?
Ooh,
In like
okay.
northern Alberta, in like the middle of nowhere, like on the border of like I think it's the Northwest Territories. There's a beaver dam that's I think it's in a national park too, and it's I think they said it's 3 football fields long.
What?
Yeah, like the world's largest
The-
beaver dam. Like Alberta's cool, man. It's got some stuff in it. Like people don't realize like world's largest beaver dam. It's a thing.
oh,
You can Google it. It'll come up.
there's not enough tannerite.
No, they would probably defeat you.
The beavers are banding together at this point. They're like,
Yeah, they'd
yeah,
have little hats
we're
on, man. Little army
gonna,
hats. They'd have like muskets and stuff.
yeah, that's awesome.
Oh.
So have you got into hunting and fishing, or are you just doing
I've
mostly
thought about
hiking, camping?
I've thought about hunting. At one point, I was getting like my PAL and stuff like that, but then I passed it all. I did all the like the course, restricted, non-restricted. Filled out the paperwork, and then I just never submitted it. And then I just kind of like forgot about it because I was just kind of like I was like I don't even really want a gun. And I think at the time I can't remember what money was like for me, but it might have been a bit tighter. So I was like, I couldn't even afford one if I wanted one. So it was kind of, so it was kind of like, like whatever, like I'll just leave it. And then I don't know. I started looking into like, it's like, well, if I was going to hunt, I think I'd prefer to do it with a bow because I feel like at least that's kind of like a skill and like you can kind of like Well, I guess you could do that with rifles and stuff too. But for me, I kind of had like, I started getting like weird about hunting. I don't know. Like it's like, oh, I think I have to give the animal a bit more of a challenge. Like maybe I should have like a challenge where I have to like have like I have to draw back and hold steady and like all that kind of stuff. And like, I don't know. And I kind of debated about it a little bit, and I was like, I don't know. And then like I talked to guys and they hunt and stuff like that, and they give their opinions. And I got into fishing a little bit. Like I started doing ice fishing a lot. I
Okay.
bought like a bunch of kit for ice fishing, and that was kind of cool. That was kind of fun. That's a time and a half. Like you just set up a shelter, and you just have a good time with the boys. Like and there's a lot of people out here. I live on Sylvan Lake, not on the lake, but in Sylvan Lake, and lots of people like just in their driveways are just like building shelters and sheds and stuff. It's like a little hobby craft slash like I don't know, like a little like they just try to make like cool little huts and stuff, and they just sort of like spend that time with like their kids building it, and their friends come over and like I don't know, man. There's something cool about ice fishing where it's almost like a team bonding type thing. And then I don't know. I talked to fly fishers. That's something I probably never get into, but that's like that almost seems like a like they're learning magic. I don't know. Like there's something there's something like about the it's like a discipline. It's like the way they like catch things and they tie their own flies and it's like it's almost like it reminds me of like the guys that would like paint like little miniature figures in high school. The way they like they're so meticulous with like the flies and stuff and I'm like I can't like even I can't even imagine like spending hours like just like with little like fingers like just trying to like tie these knots and so I couldn't do it.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, believe it or not, winter was my favorite season growing up. Growing up in Muskoka, like it was hockey, it was ice fishing, and like that was everything, and snowmobiling. So before I could get my driver's license, I'd have to wait until wintertime to be able to go see my buddies that were like living a little like a distance away, where like it wasn't walkable. So I would wait until the lakes would freeze just so I could snowmobile over, and then we go ice fishing or whatever we'd be doing. Like my dad always had an ice hut, and so we put the ice shack out on like Lake Joe or Lake Rosso, and we'd be just catching Lakers or whatever, really. And that was a time. Love doing it. I love fishing, but I'm gonna admit I'm a way better hunter than I'm a fisher. I'm a terrible fisherman.
Yeah,
I
I'm not
couldn't
very
even.
good at anything like that, man. I'm terrible at all of it. But there's a
It's
lot
a
of people that are good at it. Like
it's yeah, it's a discipline. There's a buddy I work with there. He's a great fisherman. His name's Jeff, and he's him and his brother. They've entered a couple of competitions and they've won some good money and some good prizes out of it before too. And I always was like, man, like wish we had that with hunting around the area. Would be sweet because I could do that, no problem. Like I got some racks that that are mounted on my wall right now. I'm like, yeah, these are some contenders for sure. But yeah, fishing.
yeah, fishing
It's
competitions are kind of cool, man, because I like it when they have like, oh yeah, well if you could catch like this invasive species we're trying to get rid of, like we'll give you like $5 a fish. And then like even if you don't catch the biggest fish, but you just got like a crap ton of these like terrible like fish, like you're still kind of the winner, like in a way, like walk away with a couple $100.
well, they did bounties for coyotes for a time in Ontario. Like it was like an open kill order on coyotes, and so if you brought a paw or if you brought a tail into the M&R, then you make some money on it. I think it was don't quote me on it, but I think it was something like $80 or $60. So this is back when I was in college, and I was thinking like we'd always see coyotes running around in Kitchener. So I went to Conestoga College, and like it's a farm town area all around the city, and where the college is, it's very farmland and housing development that's like slowly building into that. But we see like a lot of coyotes come onto like the campus and whatnot. And I was thinking, we came up with the idea where we were thinking about it. We didn't do it, but we were thinking about like just killing coyotes on campus, snaring
You would
them or
probably
something.
get in trouble, I think. More than
Oh,
likely.
we would be, yeah, we would be definitely expelled, probably charged.
Yeah, you probably get charged. Yeah, discharge firearm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it wouldn't go
Well, no,
well.
no, we thought about, like, we weren't going to bring the gun, like, that's for sure. Like, that was a big no no. Can't do that. Like, bring a gun on school campus. But we
Why do you have a
that
gun here? The coyotes. They'd be like, oh, no.
I swear it's for the coyotes. What?
Yeah,
What?
that
No,
would
no,
not
no,
go
no.
over well at all. Like,
Yeah, that's I think we'd get swatted at that point.
dude, you get taken out. Like the moment you stepped on property with like all, like they would just see you. They'd be like, what are these guys doing here?
Why is this guy in a ghillie suit?
They would go, yeah, they go into lockdown.
So we came up with the idea to snare something. Instead, we're just like, we'll plant traps, and we're like, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea either. Like, what if somebody walks through it?
Yeah, you couldn't do that either. Yeah, no,
They
there's
just get
nothing you could really do. There's too many
snared with some
people.
copper wire. Oh yeah, yeah. So you know what? We decided we vetoed that idea, and we just let the coyotes. We let them be. But you know what? That was a we were planning on getting rich doing that. You know, there's a couple of us thinking
It's a
about it. I was like,
get
you know,
rich
we
quick
could.
scheme that could have backfired.
Yeah. Oh yeah. What's the risk versus reward
Yeah,
here?
huge risk,
Well,
huge reward. Like, oh my god, hilarious.
the
But
going viral on YouTube at that time wasn't really a thing, unless like you were the Paul brothers, like doing stupid pranks. But other than that, you know, nowadays, I don't know. It might
coyotes,
be. I'm
coyotes
not
are.
planting any ideas in anybody's head.
Yeah,
I
do
have
not
no
do
idea.
that. There's no more
Yeah,
open order. There's no like,
yeah.
please stop. That's not
I
a good
don't think
idea.
there is.
We've
I
detailed
don't
how
think
it's
there
a bad idea. And then
is. Don't do that.
yeah, and then coyotes, man, they're successful. They're really good. Like that's why those kill orders go out. But like, a part of me thinks
Well,
I don't know. Like, what? I guess you need more wolves. I guess wolves kind of like dominate coyotes. And then the way you get more
uh,
wolves is like you need like more deer. But I don't know,
well, the
man.
MNR did something to try to take down deer population, and then, well, okay, so they introduced fishers originally into Ontario because the porcupine population was too high. And fishers, what they would do is they'd flip them over and then they'd eat them from the belly. So no other predator figured it out. Like bears couldn't do it, coyotes, wolves, like they were just getting pricked and then they'd just leave, right? They'd
Yeah.
be like, yeah, not worth it, screw it. But fishers were introduced because of that. And then they introduced cougars into Ontario because of the deer population. Like, why not just offer more tags to hunters? I don't know. I don't know the rationale behind it.
That's a weird one. So I can kind of deep dive a little bit into this because so well, I guess the tags would no, okay. Normally hunters want the biggest gnarliest buck, right? They want the biggest rack. Like that's kind of the goal, right? And then I guess when they get like a doe tag, I'm not a hunter, so I don't know, but I'm gonna suggest that they probably want like a good looking doe. Now, what a cougar attacks is actually different than what a hunter hunts. So they go for like the weak and the vulnerable or the easy kill. Or like so a big strong buck might not be the easiest to kill. They could probably still kill it. But normally they're probably going to go for the smaller ones, the weaker ones, the sicklier ones that get caught out, you know, they can't run away as fast or whatever. So I don't know if that's like an M&R strategy where they're like, well, we don't need more of the healthy ones dying. We need more of the like vulnerable ones. I don't know. Maybe you know.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, potentially. I mean, there's definitely some merit to that for sure. Because I mean, I do myself. I don't. I'll let a lot of deer go. Ones I don't really consider shootable overall. But in my earlier days of hunting, like, yeah, if it was brown, it's down. Like,
Oh my god.
yeah, like if there were two, like there's a story I have where I saw two bucks. I saw 6 point and one that wasn't super visible, but we had tons of tags. We had surplus tags this year, and so like our gang, I think there was think there was about 14 hunters. Um, and we hunted right beside Keelbear Park, where they now have taken that as their park, but that's another story. Um, so at the time, it was Crown Land, and two bucks walked out as I was sitting watch, and there was another buddy of mine that was down the way. He could see me because they cut a line where the park starts and it meets the Crown Land, and so like there was a visible line that we were standing on, and we would push back into the Crown Land. So two bucks walked out, and I was just sitting on watch. So like I say, like I don't really carry a ton of equipment on me if I'm just sitting, because I don't really need to like have extra weight just for the walking in. I don't really need it. So I ended up shooting this one, and I'll admit I didn't hit it in the best spot. So that's like the hunters. That's like that's what you hate to see. Like you hate to have a bad shot.
Yeah.
Like whether the deer just like turns a little bit or whatever it is, like, or like maybe you get a little buck fever and like you're shaky. I'm not saying that's what happened with me, but
Yeah.
nonetheless, it was a bad shot. So he started running, and I ended up hitting him 3 more times before he finally went down. And so he went down, and then this other buck came flying out. So I was pulling out my other magazine, I'm throwing it in, and I ended up shooting this one. I missed 3 times, hit him once. And so my buddy, and I'm like reaching in for like more ammo, and I'm like, oh my God, like I don't have any more ammo.
You're
So
just
my
out.
buddy I'm out. I had four rounds in each. And so my buddy, who was like staring at me, like go like just unloading in the bush.
Oh my God.
It probably sounded terrible. He comes, I end up like waving him over. He comes running over, and he's like, "What's up?" And I'm like, "You see that deer that's standing right there?" And he's bleeding from its side. And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Shoot that. I have no more ammo."
Oh my
So
God.
he knocks it down. And then so we're high fiving at this point. We're like, "Wow, okay, like right on." And we look back over, and the deer's gone. The,
It just took
the
off.
deer that the deer that I had shot once and he had shot once, that it dumped over right there on the spot. We look back over, and we're like, "Where did it go?"
It got back
So we're
up.
like, it got back up and it started running. And I'm going, "Oh my God, like what? Like what'd you shoot it with?" And he goes, "I shot it with an SSG. Like he shot it with a slug." And I'm like, "Oh my God, like how is this still alive?" So we're sitting there. I'm like, "Let's just wait for a second, let it do its thing," and it probably just fell over and died somewhere else. And he goes, "Where'd the other deer go that you shot?" And I was like, "It's right over there. That's dead for sure." So we give it a little time, and we walk over, and like we're young hunters at the time, so like I'll be honest, we don't really know a whole lot. We saw the 2 deer, and we're like, "Yep, that's what we want." So they're going down. And we ended up walking over and saw this blood trail, and we followed it, and all of a sudden it just stopped. The blood trail just completely, it was done. Like, so we're looking around, so we start going back and retracking again and marking our spots going in, and still can't find it. Looking around, and so we just ended up fanning out and kind of like walking into the bush a little bit. And so as soon as I walked in past like this bedrock that we were standing on, I walked down into the hardwood area, and all of a sudden I could just see it slumped over a stump, and I was like, "Hey, it's right here." But they're finicky, man. Like, it can be, for somebody that's not into the sport, it could be a very intimidating thing, like overall. For somebody that's like trying to get into it or thinking about it, like I get the hesitation to it, especially because the shooting of the deer, whether it be like a bow and arrow or a rifle or a shotgun or a muzzleloader, that can be intimidating, but that's not the hunt. The hunt is everything before. It's the scouting. It's the, if you're like, you can't bait 2 weeks ahead of the hunt, but if you're constantly like scouting and you're doing something all year long where you're putting out, if you're putting out bait like salt lick or whatever, and that's part of the hunt. And then you have to like learn the bush. Now you have GPS, but you have to map it out, or you could get lost. before we had GPS on our phones, like that was one thing that I did as a kid was just walk the bush like constantly with my friends.
Yeah,
We would
same.
just be in we'd just be inside the woods, like
Yep.
constantly walking in and out, just getting lost, trying to figure it out ourselves. And we just like listen for the highway, listen like mark trees or like
Yeah,
look at
rivers,
like
that kind of
specific
stuff.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then we started learning like how the sun would be like, okay, the sun rises on the east, sets on the west. So if it's starting to set, we know where we're at. Um, all that stuff came into play. Compass reading, map reading.
There's a lot of
Then
crossover with wildlife photography or videography. Like
oh, totally.
like they basically do all that stuff except instead of shooting them with like a gun, it's a camera. Like literally, like you're like in ghillie suits. A lot of these guys, like I don't really do that too often, and because like for me, I don't really want to actually be super super close because there's actually like regulations on how close you can be and stuff like that. But also like just as like a safety thing, it's like yeah, well, a hunter has a gun. I don't have a gun, so the option on this is
Mhm.
like like basically die if you get that close. Like in some cases.
Well, there's so many. There's a lot different wildlife out there for sure. I mean, you got grizzlies, you got yeah cougars, you got bobcats, like like much more of those. Wolves. They got all these like different. And then you have the terrain itself. The terrain is so much different. Like the ups and downs of the mountains. That's got to be dangerous too.
Yeah. All those like
But
there's like fissures
yeah,
in
and
the
then,
ground. You just
oh,
fall
for
in,
sure.
gone forever.
Oh my God. That sounds amazing. I want to get out
I think that's how
there.
I think that's how people mostly go missing though. There's a lot of people like tourists and stuff. Like if you look at the stats, like they go for a hike, they're gone. And people are like, "Oh, were they attacked by an animal?" And it's like, "Oh no." There's like it's like everyone thinks they like just ventured off trail, fell into like a crevice, and they're just gone. Like
Ooh,
that might be a horrible death too because a crevice like you're going to be in pain the entire time if you
what's that?
survive the fall and then you're
Yeah,
just stuck down there with nothing.
what's that movie? 127 Hours, where a guy gets stuck between the rock, his arm stuck in the rock, and then he has to cut his own arm off.
Oh god, I haven't seen that, but that just sounds
No,
ridiculous too.
it was a true story. It
Was
was
it?
somewhere. I think it was in. I want to say it was in like Utah or something like that. And then some guy that was he was biking through the terrain, and then he ended up crashing his bike, went down a crevice, ended up getting stuck for 127 hours, and it was like, that sounds terrible. That was the worst way to go.
Dude, there's like a crap ton of caves in the Rockies. The Rockies are made of mostly like limestone. So like I guess water over time just curves out like this massive cave and they're super old caves a lot of them, but apparently most of them haven't even been like discovered or like ventured into. Like even the ones they know about, they're still mapping them. Like they can't even really get to them and people have like died in the bottoms of them and stuff like that. So there's like a
Ooh.
ton of like cave work in the Rockies that people aren't even really conscious about. And when you go caving, like the popular caves that are like touristy kinda, you look above you and you can kind of see like a crevice. And the only thing covering that crevice really is like this like compact layer of like soil. But technically if you like needed to like be rescued in that cave, they could drill down through that ceiling. I would say relatively easily to get a crew down. But let's say you're somewhere in random in the bush. Let's say that's like soggy or wet or I don't know, maybe it's like there was a bit of an earthquake or something recently and you just step on it and you fall through. That's game over. And
Game set match.
yeah,
You're done.
people don't realize. I just kind of realized I went down the cave pill recently, and I was just kind of like peeling back that onion. I'm like, this is where people are ending up, like 100%. I think I don't know.
You might find some bodies down there.
Oh, there's somewhere like there's gotta. I mean, animals might find them. I don't know. Who knows? But
Man, nature's metal.
nature, yeah. I got featured on there once.
That's awesome. No kidding.
Yeah, but it was terrible. Like they shared it on Instagram,
Hmm.
but they didn't tag my Instagram account. They tagged my X account, which is a different handle. So it didn't tag anything. It was just like kind of like so I was just going through their story and it was like, "Oh, Nature's Epion." I'm like, "Oh, I'm Epion Explorers on Instagram." So it's like literally not tag. It's a dead tag. It's just like and I'm just like, "Oh man." And it's not even like the coolest footage I had. I think they literally put like ravens eating like a deer corpse or something. And I've sent them like videos of like like grizzly bears like throwing like deer carcasses and stuff. And I'm like, how is this not on your? I'm like,
Oh,
how are you not
that would be
featuring this? Like, why? Why are
that
you
would be
like?
so cool.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm like, but you'll show like birds pecking at a carcass. Like it does. I don't know. It kind of almost. I have a nature's metal shirt too, and every time I wear it when I'm out hiking, people always mention it and stuff like that. But
I think it's a Canadian guy that runs that too.
yeah, or it might be a girl. I can't remember. I
Yeah,
was I
somebody
went
up
to
here. I don't know.
I went to a Tim Dillon stand up comedy thing in Toronto when I was still living in Ontario, and Nature is Metal like posted like a picture from it or something, or like I can't remember, but they were there, and I was just like, holy crap! Like they were like there, like front row, basically, like enjoying Tim Dillon the same night I was. That's yeah. So I just want to point that out. Like,
Very cool. Very cool.
yeah,
You never know who you stand beside.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
I
don't
was
think they're beside me, but yeah.
well, I had a funny one, something like that too, where I was at a concert and I ended up going to, I think it was, what the hell is that place called downtown Toronto? It was like El Macombo or something like that. So the Bros Landreth was playing, and I was just grabbing a beer by the bar, and there was this tall guy that was beside me, and we kind of just nodded at each other, and I was like, hey, he looks kind of familiar. I didn't I don't know, didn't put two and two together. He just kind of looked familiar, and I went back to my spot, and I'm sitting there just vibing the music. And I look on my Instagram later that night, and who was standing beside was Kimmy Mitchell.
Oh crap.
Yeah, I was like, no way.
Dude, I think my mom knew him before. Like, she's deceased now, but she would. I think she told me like he hit on her or something once at a bar or some crap.
Oh, maybe that's your dad.
Dude, it's not, but they definitely did have like a similar look. Like they both had like long hair, like back in the day.
Oh, he's got short hair now.
Yeah.
He looks like he's cleaned right up. But that guy went for some sodas, if you know what I'm saying.
Out by those patio lanterns, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just never know who you're gonna run into or be beside.
I heard that guy's a cool guy though. I've heard that from people. Like he's down to earth and stuff. He used to do that radio show, didn't he? He was on like the radio for a bit. He was like a host on the radio.
If he wasn't on Rock 95, I probably didn't listen to him.
Yeah.
Ah, that's one thing I miss about Barrie, that area.
Yeah. Yeah. Good little ice fishing, but there's no fish in that lake, as you know.
Yep. Yep.
All gone. Anyway, buddy, anything else you want to plug on here while you got the mic?
Yeah, actually, while we're talking about hunting and the preparation to it and all, guys, one of the biggest things for hunters and fishermen is looking for like the best gear and the best equipment and stuff like that, and making sure like they have things that count. So like, just kind of going back to that story where I ran out of ammo and I had a bad shot placement. One of the biggest things for me, so back then I think I was in high school at the time, or it might have been college, and saving money, trying to get a couple of cheap rounds of ammo and a couple of expensive rounds of ammo that were in the clip. But one of the things was, after we cleaned the deer and we dressed it and then we skinned it, I noticed a big thing was how much meat we had to cut away because of like coagulated blood and the concussion impact of like the rounds. So I started on this journey to kind of find what was going to be the best equipment and like how I could save the most amount of meat and also have the most ethical kill, even if I have a little bit of a bad shot placement. I mean, they can't always be perfect, but the idea for a hunter is to make sure like you're doing right by that animal for sure. And so I actually am introducing into Canada an entirely new line of ammunition for a variety of different calibers. Some of your American listeners might know this brand, but a lot of Canadians don't. It's called Fort Scott Munitions. And I've had the pleasure of working with those guys now for almost a year. And we've introduced them into Canadian market in Ontario. Soon we'll be going out west with it. But for now, we're focusing in Ontario, and there's been some huge results and a lot of good a lot of good feedback. We've had some not so good feedback on it, so I don't want to sit there and only say the goods. But it's copper ammunition, completely lead free. It's sub MOA ammo, and it tumbles upon impact. So instead of the expansion of a typical round where like a soft point goes in and it basically mushrooms inside of its target. What it does is it enters into the hide and it tumbles. So it yields a ton of energy and it dumps energy every time it tumbles and turns. So I definitely suggest any listeners out there take a look at it. If you're a hunter, it's I'm a big fan of them. They're great, and they're available in stores in Ontario too. So that will ship out west, or anywhere for that matter in Canada. But take a look, and definitely excited to get that into the market.
Why is the tumble preferable over the mushroom? Sorry, I don't hunt, so I don't.
No, that's a great question. The tumble is something that's completely different than the rest of the market. So just to kind of put it on a bit of a perspective, where the mushroom is a very traditional way of being able to expand the round as much as possible inside the target, and what that does is it'll fragment out. So some of the lead pieces will actually come out, and it'll stay in the wound track of your animal. So it'll create for more damage. It'll create for good kills, stuff like that. But it's not typically match grade, meaning that it's not consistent ammo. And consistency is a big thing, especially for those long distance hunters, coyote hunters, wolf hunters, or elk hunters out west as well. I have some friends that do a lot of hunting out west, and they're shooting like mountain to mountain kind of thing. And you need extreme precision when you're doing that, because again, you're looking for a shot placement from an animal that could be 500 yards plus away, and like those are very difficult shots just at a standing still target, let alone an animal that could be moving. And so going to the tumble upon impact of it, what it does is it acts like a full metal jacket, but instead it's a solid copper round. So there's no plastics, there's no lead, there's nothing inside of it. It's just a copper round that has extreme precision, and it has great aerodynamics to get those long distance shots. And then once it hits its target, then it starts its tumble. So it's throwing energy inside of the wound track, and you're getting a temporary wound channel that's much greater, and you're also getting a more permanent wound channel as well inside of the animal, creating more damage inside, but less coagulated blood, and there's less fragmentation of any lead or plastics that may go inside, like a ballistic point, for example, where like a ballistic point, it's more designed for the impact, where there's most damage is on impact. And so, for example, like that story I was telling you about with where I ran out of ammo, and when I skinned it, you could see where the two soft points were hit, because it was almost like a pencil where like the entrance went in, where the other ones were ballistic point, and when they hit, they explode on impact, and it shredded through the ribs, and when it hit a rib, it actually exploded the lead as well. So then I had even more wounds inside of the animal that I had to cut meat away from. So it was more concerning for me as the person that's eating this animal, because now I'm like, well, now I got to cut away all this extra meat. Where the monolithic round, the Fort Scott round, what it does is it'll actually break through the rib, and then it starts its tumble only when it hits liquid or soft tissue. So you're getting maximum penetration with a huge amount of internal damage. And then you can expect like a good ethical kill with it, and then you get more meat. So it's kind of win-win.
Yeah, and then since it doesn't have any of those plastics or anything like that, if you're kind of like worried about like microplastics or any kind of like, there's people out there that are like super health conscious. Maybe that's something that's in their mind's eye as well as the lead, obviously.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All that comes into play. I mean, but yeah, if you're interested in, or you're just a gun guy as well, and you just want to get into like competitions, especially like long range competitions that are out west, I'd suggest checking them out. Their projectiles and stuff are all available as well, in different stores in Ontario. Um, so yeah, definitely worth a look. And I mean, we're seeing some really good results overall. So anyway, I do appreciate the plug though. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect, dude. I think that's a good spot to end off too. Like this was a great podcast. I'm sure lots of people enjoy it. Lots of good stories.
Yeah, man. I think we went through quite a bit of them for sure. But
Yeah, yeah.
thank you for having me on.
Grant, thanks for coming on, man. It was a pleasure. Thank you for the content. Thank you for the plugs. Thank you for everything, buddy. It's nice talking to you again.
Cheers, brother. Enjoy it, Westman.